Good evening. I'm calling back to order the regular meeting of the Township Committee for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2019. We take a roll call again? No. No, roll call. Okay. Will everybody rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For the record, Mr. Arvanites is present via the speakerphone here on the desk, so everybody knows. May I have somebody move the approval of the minutes from the September 18th, 2019 regular and closed meeting?
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, next I am going to move to the podium to do a presentation. So for those of you who have been to meetings earlier this year, you know that something that we have started to do as a governing body is to recognize people in the community, honor people who, for their community service, recognize people for their contributions to the community, and we are continuing that practice tonight. We have a very special honoree tonight, and I'm going to let Mark Jorphy do the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. So tonight we'll be honoring the McNally family here. At last month's meeting, we passed a resolution rededicating Harlan Green Park in the Cromwell neighborhood to Captain Brian McNally Field at Harlan Green Park. As someone who grew up playing at the parks and fields of our town, I think of the names of the individuals those facilities are dedicated to, how many of our young athletes and their families have made long-lasting memories there. We are blessed to not only have the McNally family as part of our community here, but also to know that so many people down the road will make lifelong memories at Captain Brian McNally Field at Harlan Green Park. I believe that as a community, the parks, plaques, and monuments we have throughout our town should memorialize those whose actions, character, and legacies we hope to have live on through our current and future generations. We want our residents to not only be inspired by those we memorialize, but also to aspire to do great things for themselves, their families, and their communities. By rededicating the neighborhood field in Cromwell, where Captain Brian McNally spent time growing up, we encourage our youngest generations to give back, just as Brian's legacy inspires us all to do. That is why engraving Captain McNally's name at one of our community parks is such a worthwhile decision for the Township Committee to make. When you think about what Brian accomplished during his time with us, it is incredible to grasp how many ways he gave back. From serving in the fire department here in Morris Township and the Morris Minutemen, to enrolling in the Citadel and serving in Afghanistan as a Marine, to becoming a New Jersey State Trooper, Brian protected those who he had never met out of his compelling sense of duty to serve others. It is that sense of duty, of courage, and of perseverance that Brian's legacy leaves behind for our community's youth to be inspired by, both on and off the field. Thank you to the Township Committee members and to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, Administrator Quinn, and Parks and Recreation Director Bill Folsch for your efforts in making this testament to Brian's legacy a reality. Thank you to Kevin and Barbara for being here tonight to accept the resolution this evening, and I look forward to rededicating this park in the spring with you. Thank you.
So, Barbara and Kevin, if you could come forward, we'd like to present you with a copy of the resolution. It's Resolution 173-19, and the title of it is Authorizing the Name Change of Green Field at Harlan Park to Captain Brian McNally Field at Harlan Green Park, and we look forward to the dedication in the spring. I'd like to present Next, we are going to invite up Carol Bianchi, the JCP&L Regional External Affairs Consultant, to give us a presentation on the reliability improvements that JCP&L is undergoing.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for having me tonight. I brought cards so that you all have my contact information, and I will just leave them here. So I am your new external affairs consultant. I started in May, and I'm happy to be here. I worked with the administrator Tim and with the mayor, and we've addressed a number of things when there are issues about outages or reliability concerns.
Right.
The mayor and the administrator are on top of it.
Before you continue, Tim, can we hand Carol the microphone so she can speak into the microphone for everybody? Thank you.
She has a booming voice, though.
I do. I can project when I need to. Okay, thank you. So I'll just get started because I know you have other things on your agenda, but I just wanted to share with you some, I think, facts that might help understand some of the reliability improvements that we're making at JCP&L, but also the restoration process is always eye-opening for people, how it really works. So with that, we'll get started. One of the things I wanted everyone to understand is that JCP&L has a number of preventative maintenance and inspection programs that we perform on cycles. Some of those inspections include circuit inspections every 5 years, and what we do is we proactively identify and repair equipment as needed. Also wood pole inspections every 10 years, and either reinforcing them or replacing them. We also have something called infrared scans or thermography, which allows us to detect hot spots. They're not visible to the naked eye, and we do that every 4 years. And based upon those inspections, we prioritize certain circuits, and we take measures to mitigate any issues. In addition, we have other reliability programs, vegetative management. You may have seen a number of trucks around doing vegetation management. This is on a 4-year cycle, and we remove hazard trees and emerald ash trees, or I'm sorry, ash trees that are subject to the emerald ash borer. We do that regularly, and we do that with the permission of the homeowners. And we remove overhang on our wires on the main lines, as you can see in the pictures. We also have a program called the Worst Performing Circuit Program, and we address any circuits that we feel are the worst performing, and there are a number of things that we do, whether it's replacing equipment or doing supplemental tree trimming if we find that the circuit is affected by trees, if it has a history of a lot of outages caused by trees. Sorry to have my back to some of you.
Before you go on, can you give us a definition of circuit?
What
do you mean by a circuit?
So each customer is tied to a particular circuit. So we have substations, and then out of the substations, there's different circuits. As you can see here, they're assigned circuit numbers that serve the customers. So this slide shows you the years when we have inspected or performed each of these different types of inspections. So you see a number. Most of the circuits, except for one that was done in 2017, have been done this year, are being done. Okay, so that's a schedule that we keep and we adhere to. In addition, we have what we call the IIP, or the Infrastructure Improvement Plan, also known as Reliability Plus. JCP&L applied to the Board of Public Utilities to invest in our infrastructure, and we requested $400 million to be implemented over 4 years. We received approval at this stage we received $97 million investment approval to be implemented over the course of 18 months to be completed by the end of 2020. So what's happening in Morris Township? We have enhanced vegetative management. So in addition to our regular cycle of tree management, we're doing extensive tree trimming to serve the Convent, Florham Park, Greystone, Morristown, and Whitney substations. And how that's determined is based upon the reliability of the circuits. That's how we choose. In addition, there's a device called trip savers. These are an advanced type of recloser. A recloser, if there is, let me slow down a little bit with this piece of it. The trip savers are, as I said, an advanced recloser. A recloser is on the wires so that if there's a momentary outage, the breaker can be reclosed. If it trips open, it can be reclosed automatically without a crew coming out to investigate and make repairs. These trip savers are going to be installed, 9 of them, in 2020 on those substations, Morristown, Florham Park, and Whitney. The idea being that, as the name Trip Saver suggests, it's saving the time for a crew to come out and find the problem and fix it if it's something that can be automatically fixed. So what is a sustained outage? What causes it? It's trees, it can be high winds, it can be rain, it can be a squirrel, some type of animal. So these are some of the things that we're doing, and we're going to be looking to do more in the future.
Carol, just to be clear, if you can go back one slide. Just to be clear for the public, so those substations serve different parts of town. So our town is not served by just one substation, but it's served by multiple substations, correct?
Correct.
And if the substation were to go out, you have the ability to move people over to another
circuit,
another feed.
That's called switching, right.
Okay.
So sometimes
I just want the public to
thank
be
you.
clear on that.
Thank you for that clarification. So yes, we do have the ability to switch. So if you hear the term switch, we're switching people from one circuit to another to make repairs sometimes. So that's another thing that we do. There's more reliability improvements. So I mentioned before about the worst performing circuit issue. So we analyzed it and determined that more repairs improvements were needed on these particular circuits. So it could be, I have a list of the things that we're doing, but it basically includes tree trimming if the outages were caused by trees, the installation of the trip savers, and equipment upgrades where needed. I think you might enjoy this slide. This is about our restoration process, and not everybody understands what happens when we have a storm. Sometimes it's frustrating when you're out of power and you think that the crew should just come and flip the switch and you can be put back on. But when we have a real storm, the first thing that we have to do, as you can see on this slide, is we have to determine where the damage is. And safety is our #1 priority, so we have to make sure everything is safe for our crews and also for the public. So that's the first thing that we do. And then as you go down the line, we repair high voltage lines so that essential functions are restored. If we don't start at the top, anything we do down by the distribution lines by the homeowners won't be effective, because if there's a problem up the line, we have to fix that first. Then we move down and we fix our, we want to make sure that we restore our critical facilities and hospitals. And then we get to the main feeder and distribution lines. Then we get to the customers, and we restore the largest number of customers. And that is why it's so important to call in your outages so that the dispatch center sees where the most customers are out of power. And then we restore the individual homes. So this is just a picture of what's taking place during a storm. And again, when we know a storm is coming, you know, we get the notices about hurricanes that are coming or other events, and we start planning right away. And we have staging sites, and that's a picture right there, where we will have crews staged, ready to be dispatched to different areas. We also have mutual assistance, so it's not just J.C. Pennell or First Energy. We have contracts with others to help each other out, and we will move crews, you know, across states to do that. And we will actually have them put up in hotels and have them, you know, there will be tents that are set up for them as well. And during that, there's a lot of communications that are going on with the mobile computers and the smartphones. You see a picture right there. That's actually what's happening with them constantly communicating from the scene. And it's labor intensive, so you'll see a number of crews. It's not just one. You'll have a troubleman, you'll have a hazard crew, you'll have someone who needs to de-energize a line, so there's specialties. So you'll also often see a number of crews. And we did receive a claim for our safety practices. We use best practices, and we're proud of that. So for the last 10 years, we've been recognized by the Edison Electric Institute. And again, safety is our #1 priority, and a lot of preparation goes into that to make sure that we are always safe and that no one's life is in jeopardy. And we have a lot of tools that I want to tell you about. So one of the things, if you go to our website, we have a 24/7 power center, and you can also look on the My Town page, and you'll be able to see a number of things. There's some information that is particular to Morris Township, and it's the outages, the outage information. You can actually zoom in on the map and see where the outages are. The estimated time of restoration is provided, and a lot of people like the text messaging that you can use as well. So if you went to the My Towns page, for instance, you would see the number of customers, you would have outage information. You see that you have 4,038 poles and 107 miles of distribution lines. So that's a lot of equipment that is vulnerable to high winds, rain, and trees. And again, a number of ways to communicate. We do have social media presence. Twitter and Facebook provides updates, and our customer contact center. And I have some more information about that. Here are the important phone numbers I wanted to share. If you have an outage, you want to call 188-LIGHTS with 2 S's. You can go to, you can report it online at our website. And if you have other service issues, if there are other issues other than an outage, that is the main number that you would call. And there's also a feature if you have hearing or speech impairments, and a survey at the end so you can tell us what we can do better. And that's it. So I just wanted to share that with all of you.
If you go, can you, before you close that up, can you go back to that slide before? So that number at the top, that 888 number, is something that I keep in my cell phone, because when the power goes out, often your phone goes out, and you need to have that number in your phone already. So if you don't already have JCP&L in your phone, I suggest you, as we talk, type down that phone number into your phone so that you have it, because as Ms. Bianchi just stated, everybody needs to call on their outage. It's the way that the power company determines where the greatest number of people are out. That's one of their big determinants. And you can't rely on your neighbors to do it, because if only one person on your street does it and the whole street's out, they might go to another street first because they think it's only one person. So everybody needs to call that number when the power goes out.
I'd also recommend the text messages. It's really easy to use too, the text alerts. And it gets right back to you, and it'll tell you when the estimated time for the repair to be made. So it's really nice.
Same with the outage now. It gives ETRs on most times.
So again, I just wanted to say that you know, during outages or when there's other issues, I'm in communication with the mayor and with your administrator, who are very responsive, very concerned about the residents' needs. And if there are problems that are brought to the mayor, he brings them to me and we address them. And we get to the bottom of what's going on. So thank you for letting me come tonight. My cards are all here if you would like to.
Good. I'd like to just see if anybody has any questions here before you go.
Okay. I do have a couple of questions. Could you talk a little more about the vegetation management plan as it applies to our town in particular?
Yes. So what happens is when we are going to do vegetative management, we provide notice. We do a 60-day notice and then a 2-week notice, and we provide that to the mayor and the administrator. And so, you know, and if it's private property, we are notifying the customer. We do not remove trees without permission. We work with the customer to determine whether they want to keep the wood, and that's basically how it works. But the idea, again, is because we're trying to improve reliability. So we don't, and we only work within the right-of-way where they're overhanging our lines.
And how far back do you cut the branches?
So generally, it's like a 15-foot radius. But again, if it's with the IIP program, the expanded vegetative management, if it's a little bit farther outside of that right-of-way, but it's threatening our lines, they're hanging over our lines, we work again with, you know, to remove those. So that's what we're trying. And we, you know, the BPU has determined that is like the best type of reliability improvements that we can do, because they do threaten the wires and then cause a lot of outages.
Right. I got very interested in electrical outages following Sandy. And I know from comparing the way things were then to now that there have been a lot of improvements, especially on communication. I think that was one of the biggest challenges during Sandy.
I'm happy to hear that. I found the same.
I have a follow-up question to that. So during your presentation, you stated that you work with the homeowners and that you ask permission. So do you always ask permission? Sometimes ask? What are the conditions where you go ahead and do it, and what are the conditions where you work with the homeowner and ask for permission?
So generally, we have the right of way, but we respect the homeowners. So, if we're doing tree trimming, we do our tree trimming, but we always work with we notify you of any work that we're doing. But with regard to tree removal, we don't want to do that unless we think it's necessary and we get the permission of the homeowners. So the contractors will knock on the doors of the homeowners and get their written permission, determine what they want to do with the wood, if they want to keep it for firewood, and then we work from there. And, I've worked with your administrator closely as well. If something's not left neatly, if the contractor, if a homeowner feels it wasn't properly disposed of, we'll go back, and I'll get in touch with the forester. So we have like a constant communication going if there's an issue.
So are you saying if the tree is in the right-of-way, you ask permission, or you don't, or you...
With this IIP work, we always just provide notification, but we can do the tree trimming without permission. We have the right to do it if we feel it's jeopardizing our equipment in our right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
But from my experience, which is limited being here, but also as mayor of my town, working with my predecessor, Rob Walton, there was always very much of a collaborative process. So, we would meet with the town if there were concerns. Mr. Quinn and I had a conversation the other day concerned about a cleanup of trees. I drove the whole street to see. I took pictures. I sent them to the forester. He's sending a contractor back to finish the work. The plan was all along to clean it up, but they didn't finish.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that constant communication if there's a problem.
Right. And then just for clarification for the public, so if a tree is outside the right-of-way, but its limbs are overhanging the right-of-way, right, and you deem it that the limbs are troublesome, you will trim, will you get permission to trim the limbs, or you'll go ahead and trim the limbs?
Yeah. We get permission wherever we need to, and we prefer to, because we know the homeowners love their trees, we all do, and we don't want to be leaving anybody in a situation they're not happy with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then there was one situation where you explained to me if they trim over a certain number of branches from a tree,
40%, then they'll take.
Right, so what happens is if the tree is in jeopardy, we're going to jeopardize the health of the tree because too much has to be removed, then we'll talk to the homeowner about removing the tree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so if it's beyond the right-of-way, is that the case where the tree is left on the property, or are the tree taken away in all cases? Because I thought there were some cases where the debris or the tree was left behind.
So it's definitely a case-by-case basis. I often have to check with the foresters to see what the arrangement is, and then they'll respond immediately, and we'll, address it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Before we get off...
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember during Sandy, I happened to be mayor that year, or it seemed like a year, 2 weeks that we were without lights. The major problem was when the storm hit, it just overloaded the circuits overloaded the substations, and you could hear the sounds of these things exploding all around town. If what I understand you guys can do now is the substation can just re-trip or just shut itself down before it gets into a negative situation, because what happened back in Sandy, it took a week to get the substations ready, then a week to get the circuits back up, which was why it was 2 weeks. So we're very, very delighted that you guys have figured that out.
Thank you for that. Yeah, there are a number of things. Flood mitigation measures, where the substations would get submerged in a really bad storm. We're addressing all of that. We have a lot of plans to address all those problems that we encountered in Sandy. Yeah, things are getting better and better. So
with reference to what Mr. Mancuso just said, with relation to power surges, do we still experience power surges in certain situations?
I really couldn't say for sure, but I do know that what Mr. Mancuso was referring to, a committeeman was referring to, is that we, the engineering department is really in charge of all that, but they make sure that we have, situations where we can, we don't have dangerous situations. It's basically safety, again, is the #1 priority, so they're addressing that.
Okay. And for the trees that might look troublesome this year, but maybe next year, do you also keep a database of trees to come back and take a look at, or you just come through every year and just take a fresh look?
Basically, the forestry department, they take a fresh look at what they need to do. It's not really, I don't believe it's a database. They're reviewing the streets. Yeah, every cycle they're reviewing, right. So that's why they have to come back and again review all the streets and see what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
I noticed, I think JCP&L had a subcontract going around town, looking at the poles themselves and digging them and putting, I think, a wrap around them. Can you talk to what is actually happening there, and if it's lengthening the life of the utility poles, and just give an overview of what that project is?
So, are you referring to poles being marked for removal or repair?
No, they were digging around them and then wrapping them and.
It's a Verizon product.
Oh, it is?
Okay. Thank you. Because I wasn't quite sure. But again, as we mentioned before, if we're not replacing the pole, sometimes what we're doing is reinforcing it to strengthen it in the meantime.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah. Is that what they're doing with the Verizon poles? Right. So
Yeah.
half of the poles are owned by Verizon, half are owned by JCP&L generally. That's generally the rule. All right. Thank you.
So even though you each own 50%, you still use each other's poles?
Oh, yeah, we share.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, we have joint use agreements, and we also work together. So I have a good relationship with your external affairs consultant at Verizon, and if we have an issue with a pole, we're in communication with each other. So it all works. We're all talking together to get things done.
Great. And one other thing I want to clarify for the public that I learned in one of the learning sessions that I attended at JCP&L's headquarters, which is right here in Morris Township on Madison Avenue. They always tell you not to touch a downed wire. And I always wondered why, because you would think every wire is coated, right? Every wire that you see in your house comes sheathed in some kind of coating. Well, it turns out that the power line doesn't have any coating. It's actually a live wire that sits up there on the poles, correct? And when it comes down,
yeah, at the very, very top of the pole. So our wires are at the very top.
Yeah, the very top. But they're uncoated wires.
That's why it's
which I never knew, which is why you can't touch them.
So you have to
Yeah, they're right.
You have to be so careful. Don't ever go near a wire on the ground, and also don't lean on a fence. If there's a wire down on a fence, we've had that situation occur because it could electrify the fence. So again, that's why we wait. That's sometimes why you'll see a truck sitting, babysitting the line, and people don't understand why they're sitting in their truck and not working on getting your power back right away. And the reason is that they're actually babysitting that line until the right crew is there to de-energize and make it safe and remove it from the street. We don't want anybody else touching it.
And generators can backflow into those lines.
Yes, that's the other thing. The generators can backflow, so we have to have the experts take care of that.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. And you have my phone number if you need me.
Yeah, and just for clarification, also the public, we're not taking public questions today on individual outages or individual problems, but we are taking your questions. So if anybody has a question, you want to write it down or send me an email or Mr. Quinn an email, I'll give you my card. We will answer every individual power question you have for your area, your home, your street, your neighborhood, whatever you want. But we felt that it wasn't appropriate to talk about individual neighborhoods here and take up a lot of time talking about problems that only affect a few people. So please, if anybody wants to do that, I will give you my card. You can write me an email. We will forward it to JCP&L, and we promise to get every person who has a question an answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda, you will see that we have another presentation, this time by the Environmental Commission. Dan Kenny and Tilly Jo Emerson are going to be coming up, and they're going to tell us about the study results of banning single-use plastic bags. This is an initiative, just so you know, that's taking hold in many communities in the state of New Jersey and across the country. Recently, Madison, Chatham Borough, and earlier this year, Parsippany, passed ordinances, and Chatham Township, passed ordinances to ban single-use plastics. So we're going to hear about the recommendations of the EC for doing that in Morris Township. So Mr. Kenny, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Kenny. I'm pinch hitting for Dan Faulkner, who is the chairman of the Environmental Commission and unable to attend. Just a little bit about single-use plastic bags. The first thing to know is that they're made from crude oil, ultimately. And just to give you an idea of what's involved in their manufacture, 14 bags uses enough crude oil to produce a gallon of refined gasoline. if you take note that the average person in New Jersey uses 500 single-use plastic bags a year, in Morris Township that translates to over 11 million bags in a year. Now, if you just look at that nationally, you can see the amount of fossil fuel that's going through a manufacturing process to make these bags, and you can see you can understand the magnitude of the accompanying pollution and diminution of our air quality. Only 1% nationally of plastic bags are recycled, and the rest of the bags find their way to landfills or I'm a bicyclist and I notice the litter around town. It's I don't know how they get there, but by the side of the road, you can look on main roads almost anywhere and see plastic bags. It takes up to 500 years for a bag to decompose in a landfill, and in the process it produces microplastics and other toxins. And the bags that make their way into the public domain can enter our streams and water bodies, and they are very harmful to marine life and to birds as well. I spoke with Thomas Eschman, who is the superintendent of the Township Public Works Department, and improperly discarded single-use plastic bags that end up in the curbside recycling add an incremental cost to the township's recycling budget, because when they get to the recycle center, they jam the machines, and the production line has to be shut down while the gears and sorting material is untangled. And this is according to Tom, is a significant expense, although there's no way to track it on an individual town basis, because at the recycling center, trucks from all the towns are dumping, and the material becomes fungible. Recognizing the significant environmental damage that single-use plastic bags make, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissioners last spring hosted a meeting in Madison for elected officials and environmental commission members from towns in this area. And at that meeting, we learned, as the mayor has indicated, that a number of our towns had already started down the road to looking at ordinances to ban the distribution of single-use plastic bags. The ANJEC, which is the acronym for the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissioners, did put together a model ordinance, and all of the towns in our area that have enacted or are in the process of enacting plastic bag bans have used that ordinance as a model, and have pretty much adhered to it with tweaks to adjust for concerns of their local business communities. Hearing that this effort was underway, and in fact there's an alliance of towns that was meeting on a regular basis to consider these ordinances, we in Morris Township met several times. Several people from the Environmental Commission and the Standing Committee of the Township Committee on the Environment met over the course of the summer, reviewed the various ordinances that were in process in surrounding towns, and started laying the groundwork for pursuing an ordinance in Morris Township. At the September Environmental Commission meeting, a subcommittee was formed of Billy Joe Emerson and myself to move the ball forward. And the first thing that the subcommittee did was to pursue a survey of the Morris Township business community. The township administrator was very helpful in providing us a list of the 33 businesses in town that should be surveyed. And the Unity Charter School stepped forward and offered their students and the students' parents to conduct the study. The results of the study, 3 of the 33 businesses on the Township Administrator's list are no longer in business, and of the remaining 30, 15 responded to the survey. 87% of the respondents recognized that plastic is a significant threat to the environment, and the 47%, close to 47%, were in favor of taking action to eliminate the use of single-use plastic bags. I should note that, just to back up, as the mayor mentioned, Madison and Chatham Borough and Parsippany Troy Hills have, over the course of the summer and early fall, have enacted single-use plastic bag ordinances, and Chatham Township is in the process, and I believe that Morristown, as of a couple of weeks ago at least, was contemplating going down, or they're going down that road, but they're somewhat behind in the process. The survey asked township businesses about barriers to eliminating plastic bags from their business, and 47% of the respondents said that cost was not an issue. Basically, the businesses in this town, as you probably can guess, are relatively small, although at the development going on the former Menon property in Hanover, there is to be some, it looks like, some larger scale commercial activity at some point. But, other towns have talked to national retailers and found that the national retailers already have plans in place, because this is a nationwide concern, and it can be as simple as just flipping a switch and changing from the use of single-use plastic bags to another plan, another business model. We after reviewing the one other thing from the survey, that 47% of the respondents also favored an outright ban, and given the survey results, the subcommittee met over the last couple of weeks, and we looked at the ANJEC model ordinance, and we looked at the results of the surveys, and we took the ordinance and marked it to reflect some concerns. One of the broad-based concerns among the people responding to the survey was implementation, and that they wanted a significant amount of time to ramp up and prepare for it. So we, in our recommendation, which I'll get to in a second, we're recommending that the effective date of any ordinance that's adopted be no earlier than July 1st, which would allow a minimum of 6 months, assuming the ordinance is adopted in calendar year 2019. When we made our presentation, and this was done on a one-off basis, so it's not to invoke the run afoul of the public meeting ordinance, but each of the committee members was briefed on the subcommittee report and its recommendations for any ordinance that might be drafted, and there was unanimous support for recommending to the Township Committee the adoption of a ban on single-use carry-out plastic bags. The subcommittee has engaged with the Township Administrator, and assuming that you decide to go ahead tonight, we will be sitting down with the Township Attorney and the Township Administrator in another week or so to go over the concerns that were identified in the survey and to give our recommendations as to what we think the draft of the ordinance that's prepared might look like. So that's about it. It's a unanimous recommendation. And the one thing that I do want to do is, I don't know if there's anyone here from the community charter school, but if there is, I want to thank Jennifer Karsich and her students for their hard work.
If there are any students here, could you stand up, please? No, just parents and students. Moms too, that you participated. Thank you so much for your help and on this issue.
You have a unanimous Environmental Commission recommendation to proceed to ban single-use plastic bags.
Very good.
Township.
Good.
Thank you.
Does anybody on the dais here have any questions? So
I have just a comment. You know, when you talked about the implementation and having several months to implement after the ordinance is created, I think that's a very important time, and I'm sure the Environmental Commission, and I'd like to extend an invitation to Unity in Morristown, I guess it was Morristown High School, to participate. Thank you. To participate in the education and the outreach with the community. I think it's very important for helping people understand what's happening.
One of the recommendations that the EC subcommittee will make at the meeting with the township administrator is that the ordinance actually provide that the township, and through whoever means it chooses, could be the Environmental Commission or that the township engage in an outreach and education program to sensitize people that this is coming, not only the businesses but the citizens as well.
Yes.
It seems to me too, sir, that in this generation and day of accomplishments, that somebody is going to figure out how to make a plastic biodegradable bag in a very short time.
Actually, I spoke in trying to get myself up to speed with this. I was told that notwithstanding the labels that you see on bags, that there really is no such thing as a biodegradable plastic bag. Mm-hmm. It depends on a certain set of having a senior moment of the bugs that eat the plastic. Sure. And if your landfill doesn't have the right combination of bugs, then it's not biodegradable. And there are also, I'm told, that bags that are labeled compostable are not, because they will only compost under significant heat and pressure, which is only done at a commercial facility, and the commercial facilities won't accept the bags. So,
that's interesting.
The only as we found at the Environmental Commission, the only real solution is just not to have them in the first place.
Well, you have a listening and a willing audience, I think, sir.
Yeah. Just before you go, one question I had received was people who have dogs and go walk their dogs and need to pick up poop. What are they going to do? And I believe that they're environmentally friendly. Maybe they're labeled compostable bags that you could use, but certainly better than the plastic bags you get at the supermarket, I believe.
Actually, the
and
plastic bags that there is a it's not a perfect solution, but it's an elegant solution. At least the ShopRite on Hanover now sells plastic bags that are certified to be made up of 89% recycled plastic bags. So you're buying the bags, but you're not using as much virgin polyethylene as an original bag. You're kind of turning them through. Mm-hmm. I would assume that if this gets to a critical mass, that there will be similar bags for dog or for animal waste and whatever. But you can now buy at ShopRite not only the kitchen kitchen waste basket bags, but also the full-blown trash bags with 89% recycled content, and I highly recommend it.
I think one thing we need to do is be sure, from what I've heard, other towns that have written these ordinances have so many exceptions and so many things that don't really comply. I think that our ordinance should be as relatively tight as possible.
Yes, there's a number of things that the ANJEC model carves out: dry cleaner bags, take-out food bags, because apparently right now, if you've got a leaky container of Chinese food or something, you really don't want to put it in a flex paper bag. So there are, and if you look at the nature of the responding businesses in Morris Township, not many of them are actually going to feel the full effect of the ban because they're carved out.
But I think the bottom line is we're heading in the right direction. I think there's significant public desire for something like this, and I think it sends a message that we have to move away from plastic bags. My personal connection to it, and I was going to ask you, my personal connection is one of the most important things in life for me is quality drinking water. I drink water out of the tap. I refill my bottles from tap water, and the concern is that the microplastics that are getting into the drinking water are getting at higher levels. I don't think we test for it yet, but my question to you is it getting to a certain point where the water companies are going to start testing for microplastics in the water?
From everything I read, I'm surprised that they're not doing it now, because it's ubiquitous.
Yeah,
and you can't avoid it.
Right. So we're not even sure how much microplastic we're drinking today in the water we get from our tap.
There's one thing also. This is kind of germane to Mr. Mancuso's comment of making it tight. The reason that ANJEC is pushing municipalities to adopt these ordinances is because for the last 2 years there have been bills pending in both the New Jersey Senate and General Assembly banning single-use plastic bags, and for whatever reason they have gone nowhere. Somebody's lobbying against them. So the municipalities in New Jersey that are concerned about this issue are going down the individual municipality route, trying to get a critical mass to demonstrate to their elected officials that the public wants the statewide ban. New York State adopted one last year, and we should be doing the same thing. But to date, 88 municipalities, in addition to Chatham Borough, Madison, and Parsippany Troy Hills, have adopted ordinances banning single-use plastic bags, and we hope that Morris Township can add to the number.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you again to the students and the parents who participated. And we're hoping that later this year we will be introducing an ordinance. It's something that we're going to be working on in the next month. So with that said, before we move on to the public commentary, I just wanted to take a 2-minute break and call the meeting back to order, please. So before we move to public commentary, somebody just asked in the audience what other opportunities they have to talk to the individual township committee members, and I just want to let people know that we have implemented, did it start last year? Or this year, last year, office hours. Yep. And so we do this once a month. It rotates between committeemen. There are 2 committee people there each month, and the next date is when?
November 6th.
November 6th, it'll be...
Yeah. So it's usually on the 2nd Wednesday, but next month, because of the New Jersey League of Municipalities meeting, which occurs in the 3rd week of November, we're having our Township Committee meeting in the 2nd week of November, which I was going to remind everybody of later, and because of that, we're moving the office hours up a week to November 6th. So November 6th, but going forward, the 2nd Wednesday of the month is usually office hours. 2 Township Committee people will be here in the building in the evening hours, sometimes 4 to 6, sometimes 5 to 7. You'll have to check. And you can come in and speak about individual issues with 2 of the committee people if you can't make it here on a Wednesday. So I just wanted to make sure people knew about that, November 6th. And with that, we're going to open the public commentary. I would like to read the speaker's time limitation. Jeffrey Grazel announced that in order to give interested parties a fair chance to be heard, each speaker could comment for an unassignable period of 5 minutes before turning the microphone over to the next speaker, and that after each has had a turn, a person may be heard for an additional unassignable period of 5 minutes. So when you approach the microphone, I ask that you state your name and your address, please.
Alita Karras, 60 Old Glen Road. Okay, should I talk into this?
Yes.
Okay.
You can bend, I think you can bend the, no.
We can hear you.
Go ahead, we got you.
Okay, so here I am again. I feel like I keep doing this over and over. I come to the, those are excellent, the office hours. We appreciate you having those. We have had our neighbors from Old Glen Road, where there's quite a few of us here tonight. Everyone from Old Glen Road, please raise your hands. So we have quite a few. This is a small amount of the people who wanted to come. As I've said, many of the times that I've been here, we've had many, many young families move onto our street. They are home with their kids. It was hard for them to juggle, people getting home from work late and getting here. So they are representing quite a few, many others that couldn't actually be here in person. And we had a few who left, who were able to kind of squeeze over getting over here but had to leave. So as you will remember, at the last meeting, I did make a presentation about the visually separated pedestrian lanes. I have looked further into it, and I've spoken to the New Jersey Department of Transportation, and they told us that these are being put in 2 towns in New Jersey. They were just approved in Bernardsville and Eatontown, New Jersey. So the DOT, the New Jersey DOT, is very much behind these. They're working with the Federal Highway Administration, and so we are looking to work with them going forward, and they even go in and design them for the towns. And I won't get into that whole process because there's a lot more information there. I'm not here to do that tonight. I'm here just to keep this alive, keep Old Glen Road in your minds. One of the problems in getting here, besides people being busy, is people are very frustrated on Old Glen Road. They feel that nobody really cares. It seems like the street was made or is being made as just an access for vehicles. And the fact that people live on the street and need to just step off of their property to get their mail, to walk down the street, and of course all the feeder streets. We also have representatives here from some of the feeder streets that come into Old Glen, such as Fairfield. We have people here from Fairfield and some others who couldn't make it but were very interested in being here and will be writing. So everyone is just really frustrated. So that's what I'm here to do tonight. I'm not going to do another presentation like I did last time, just to remind you that it's very dangerous. And we feel really bad. The frustration that I get from speaking to everyone is that they feel bad that we have to kind of beg for something to be done for our safety. That's the greatest frustration, is that they feel that we have to beg for this. There was a number of years ago someone on Woodland around the corner from us where there was no sidewalk, and I believe a baby got killed. The woman was pushing her baby carriage. There was no sidewalk. The baby got killed by a car hitting them, and then sidewalks were put in. So we don't want to do that. We want to be ahead of that, and I can see it happening though. And the speeds that they come through, I know that the police really have tried with the signs and all of that. It really doesn't do it. Everyone's in a rush. They're trying to just go through. Rush hour is ridiculous. And I know I'm probably getting close to the time, but I don't know how many times I have to say how dangerous it is. We don't have sidewalks. We're asking, now we've kind of given up on that. We're asking just for a little access, a little area along the side of the road to walk that could be protected just with some lines. It's just paint. It's free. It's just paint. And we're just kind of begging for something to protect us. And we're getting a little bit frustrated about having to do that over and over. So we will keep doing it, though. You're going to be sick of seeing me. Also, crosswalks. We do walk anyway, despite the danger. Obviously, we walk. We try to go across to Ginty. People come from the feeder streets. People come from other areas, when there's races down at Ginty, when there's movie nights and all kinds of things, people park along the side streets off of Old Glen and try to walk to those things. So people are walking, you get to the end and you can't cross Woodland because there's no crosswalk. Now we found out we can't have a crosswalk because when you don't have a sidewalk, you can't get a crosswalk. It's like, that to me was insult on top of insult. It really was. No, you can't have a sidewalk. Okay, just give us a crosswalk so we can get across this dangerous Woodland. Nope, because you don't have a sidewalk. So someone in this day and age, when we're being encouraged to walk and get outside and the elderly, the young children and all of that, maybe just be able to walk to the corner. Nope, you can't do it. You have to stay on your property or get in the car. Very frustrating. And I appreciate the neighbors all being here because they're frustrated from the many years of begging for some kind of attention. And so tonight, a little bit different. This is how I'm feeling. I told my husband earlier, I said, I came last time in a very business-like way and made a presentation. Tonight, I'm feeling a little frustrated and feeling like it's going nowhere, and I think everyone feels like that here. But they came out anyway, and I appreciate that. And hopefully we'll keep coming out until we have something to help us out on the street. That's it.
So
before
you take off, so I know you came out and you gave a very nice presentation last time. Let's turn down the volume a little bit there. And I know Mr. Quinn has invited you to come in to talk about some of the concerns that the police department has and engineering about the design of that painted green area along the side of the road, because there are some safety concerns with that. But it's very interesting to hear that you found 2 other towns that have NJDOT approval. So if you could give copies of that to us, I would very much be interested in reading that. And
you can see the reports there online. I'll get the website. I do want to say, just in response to what you just said, we do feel that it's kind of, it seems like there's a way of always finding a no. Like whatever we bring up, we can't. Can we have speed bumps? No. Can we have this? No. Can we have that? No. And that's part of the frustration, and that's really what I'm talking about tonight. So I would like for the town to work with us to say, okay, all of those things are no, but how about this? And that's what we tried to do by doing this. This may not be the ideal. It seemed like it was because the government seemed to be behind it, but if it's not the ideal for some reason that the town engineer or the police department understands better than we do, then suggest something else. We don't want to leave it that, well, those 8 or 10 things don't work, so that's the end. So we're stuck.
So some good news also for you is that at the last meeting or the meeting before, we passed an ordinance to create a new advisory committee called the Transportation Advisory Committee, and one of the things they're going to be looking at is, walking and biking in the town in circulation, how people get around. They're going to be looking at sidewalks. My hope is the committee hasn't been formed yet. We're actually making the appointments tonight, and they're going to have a first meeting later on this year and then get started next year. I'm hopeful that the committee is going to do a survey, a townwide survey of what people's desires are, and so we'll get people's inputs about how they want to walk. Yours we certainly know about and will be included in it. But another one of their tasks is going to be looking at ways to do that. If it's not a sidewalk, if it's a multi-use path, if it's a painted area in the street, if a barrier is required, they're going to be assessing all of those things, not just for your street, but we're hopeful that they're going to be doing it for elsewhere in Morris Township. And we're going to have a lot of learning next year on this topic area. So I know you guys have been asking for it for a long time, and I know there's been discussion of sidewalks, and with relation to the sidewalks, people always wanted on the other side of the street, not their side of the street. If you drive up Old Glen, it is a beautiful street, but there are a lot of trees that are close to the road, and some trees would have to come down, and I don't know if people would be comfortable with that. But again, not trying to say it's not important, but this Transportation Advisory Committee that's being formed is going to be looking at this issue amongst others and coming back to the town for recommendations across the town about what we should be doing for connectivity. It's exactly what you were talking about. We want people to walk and bike to our recreational facilities. If there's a movie, we want people to walk and bike to those kinds of things and to be able to do it safely. So it's on our radar, is what I can tell you. But short term, before the spring, I don't think we're going to see anything, unfortunately. But Mr. Quinn still wants you. What's that? Oh, yes. And sure. Mr. Arbanese is chiming in by the phone. I'm going to put my microphone up there. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Yeah, so at our last office hours, we had tossed around 3, 4, maybe even 5 different ideas, trying to get very creative in coming up with a solution for Old Glen. And unfortunately, because of the standards that we have to meet for safety, there was one reason or another that we couldn't do any of those. The one thing that I proposed, and Mr. Quinn, I believe, is looking into it, and hopefully the rest of the committee will support it, is for us to put a sidewalk on only the corner of Woodland and Old Glen, so that we can then put a walkway crossing Woodland. The only way we can get a crosswalk is if we have 2 sidewalks connected. And so that's a cost-effective measure for us to be able to get a walkway at least, which is the start to doing something. So, I think we've all heard your frustrations on something trying to be done. We are trying to come up with creative ways to make it work that follows all of the regulations that we have to adhere to. And so, hopefully we can get the funding in place, which I think, Mr. Quinn, I don't know if you have any information for us today or if you want to get that to us in the near future, getting that done on the corner of Woodland and Old Glen so that we can at least get a crosswalk in.
Okay, thanks, John.
I'll speak in after that.
Okay. Mr. Quinn says he's going to speak to you afterwards, John, with some findings. But the other good thing for the neighborhood is that I said we're going to be appointing some people to this Transportation Advisory Committee. Alita is one of the appointees, and you can bring all of this knowledge and all of this learning to TAC to see how we can. TAC is going to be making the recommendations to the Township Committee on how to do these kinds of things, and we look forward to all the knowledge that you've gathered and your expertise that you're going to bring to TAC when we make the appointments later tonight. And your presence, you'll be able to move this issue forward, I promise you.
I do feel like if we come up with something different for Old Glen, because the sidewalks seem to be such a problem, if we come up with something different, then we can use those kinds of things all over town.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And so anything that we do could be groundbreaking. I know there's going to be issues and the trees and all that, but we're thinking about the lives of our kids. And I love trees. No one loves trees more than I do, believe me. But they tease me in my house about the trees, how much I love trees. But the lives of the kids that I see on the block with all the young families coming in are a lot more important to me. And so, anyway, I'm happy about being on that. I will work very hard on that committee, as you can see. I don't give up.
Good. No, and thank you for being passionate about the issue. That's the way things get done.
I agree. I have a couple of comments. I just want to thank you for coming in. I hear your frustration. This is my neighborhood, too. I've walked that street. I know how treacherous it is from firsthand experience. And part of TAC's purpose is to develop a plan in the 4 areas, one of which is walking. And part of developing a plan is looking at what the options are, thinking out of the box, identifying what the costs are, identifying funding sources, possibly grant money, and this is what you're tapping into here is a major purpose of what this committee is going to be looking at and making advisory recommendations on. And I will say also that the meetings, the TAC meetings, Transportation Advisory Committee meetings are open to the public, and you're welcome to come and hear what's discussed and have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments if you would like, and I encourage that.
I just had one comment. Thanks for coming, Alita, and thank you for all the residents for coming out. Alita, do you know, I know obviously you have support here in the room. Have you done any sort of poll with your neighbors to kind of track which parts of the street are in favor or against or have concerns?
Right. We haven't done an official one at this time. However, I've been putting so much time into this, and some people actually from the street suggested that we put together a petition, which would be that same type of thing. And I said, I work in Manhattan. I'm coming home and trying to get all these things done. I said, it's just, I can't do that next thing. However, I have a volunteer, and that volunteer actually lives on Fairfield. So that's why I said this is not only affecting Old Glen Road residents. So that person is on Fairfield, and just today emailed me and said that she will bring around flyers and petitions and get signatures and everything else. So that's going to be done. This way we'll have all the names, because so many people here came tonight, but so many could not.
Right.
So that's going to be done shortly.
That's great. I think it's really important, because I know a few years past there was a mailed survey. I'm not sure how long ago.
13 years ago.
So
I think almost every house has new residents.
So yeah, so having that updated information is really important to us, and it'd probably streamline the process for us when it comes time to make that decision as the committee. And then if you have issues with it being able to get the manpower to do that, I would think the committee would want to talk about whether or not we can mail out something to get an official poll from the residents as to whether or not they're in support or against.
And that is something that the TAC could look at also.
And I think we'll have to decide how you determine what's in support, what isn't. Is it a simple majority? Is it just one person saying they don't like it and then it's out? I mean, that wouldn't be fair. So I guess it's something that the committee will plan. Okay.
Thank you very much for your effort, Ms. Garrett. We really appreciate it.
But again, just to reiterate, the reason why we put together the Transportation Advisory Committee, one of the big reasons is to look at walkability, and this is one of the areas that we're going to be looking at.
Hi, my name is Sylvie Michaels, and I live at 39 Wood Road in Morristown. I'm currently Morris Township. And so I'm doing environmental club at the Morristown High School, and I'm going to be talking about some of the negative repercussions of single-use plastic. And so to begin, plastic bags aren't biodegradable, which means they're never fully decomposed. And a plastic bag can take anywhere between 400 to almost 1,000 years to break down in the environment. And as it breaks down, the plastic particles can contaminate soil and waterways, which is further affecting the environment. Along with that, a lot of plastic bags easily end up in rivers and oceans and storm drains, which also can lead to garbage patches. And a lot of marine life is confusing the plastic for food, and when it's digested, it can kill them and cause them to become ill. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Morris Semple. I live at 13 Chimney Ridge Drive, Morris Township. First, I have some statistics I'd like to give out.
Sure. Thank you. Give the mayor some
To begin, single-use plastic bags being freely distributed in stores should be immediately banned. The production of these bags contributes to so many fossil fuel emissions. They are not biodegradable, and they often end up polluting the oceans, killing wildlife, and entering our food system. The cost for cleanups and recycling of these plastic bags are just unrealistic, and it only makes sense to start making action on a local government level. States including Hawaii, California, Maine, Vermont, Connecticut, Oregon, and New York are all among the first to legislate statewide bans against the free distribution of these single-use plastic bags. Jenny Romner, an expert on plastic bag policies, regards more than 400 laws or ordinances across the country either banning or taxing plastic bags. And considering the Morris County Recycling Center's incapability of recycling these specific types of bags, it only increases the chances of our county's bags ending up in oceans and landfills. According to the UN Environmental Organization, researchers estimate that more than 8.3 billion of tons of plastic has been produced since the early 1950s, and about 60% of that plastic has ended up in either a landfill or natural environment, and 9% of all plastic produced is recycled. If these trends continue, The oceans will have more plastic than fish by the year 2050. A study conducted by Tatiana Homanoff from the University of Chicago recognizes that most people know how environmentally dangerous plastic bags are. They just need that nudge to change their behaviors. And this tax or ban would be that nudge in the right direction to fixing our environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Mancuso.
How are you, sir?
I got your circular. I'm definitely voting for you. I want to congratulate the newest members. I'm a Republican. I'll tell you why I voted for you.
So,
Paul Walsh,
and your address?
31 Bradwell. I've
Thank
lived there since 1965.
Thank you, sir.
I've voted in every election, every primary since 1980. I voted for the two Democrats because I want you to support the Morris Township Police Department. I've talked to several of them. They don't get very good raises. And whatever you can do for them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Michelle Holland. I live at 4 Brookfield Way. The reason I came today was
Can you turn the microphone down towards you? There
Okay.
you go. Thank you.
the reason I came was for the JCPL presentation, and I came in very optimistic, hoping she'd say something that sort of assuage like our my neighbors and my fears that nothing's really going to change. And I can't say I feel any more optimistic now. She just kind of went over sort of some kind of status quo stuff that they seem to be doing, but there's no like hard targets about we aim to reduce outages by this percent or the duration by this amount of time. I think a lot of people who've lived here a long time maybe have some sort of blind spot, like this is a normal occurrence. And let me tell you, it's not. I've lived all over the country. My mother lives in Nicaragua in a small rural village. It is not normal to lose power this much. I hate public speaking, but I keep coming because it's very frustrating that this seems to keep going on and nothing will change. But for people who don't have generators, let me just tell you like how inconvenient, not just inconvenient, it's just downright disruptive. If you have a child and they don't have heat at night, if you lose power for a week like we did 2 years ago, and it wasn't a major storm, I lost all my food, having to pay for hotels. And what about people who don't have money or family to go stay at a hotel or somewhere to stay? It's just, I'm hoping that the city will start demanding some more accountability. I don't know what the options are. I think maybe join that co-op, and again, even if they're still in charge of delivery, it's some sort of pressure to say, we're not going to keep paying you to deliver subpar service when your shareholders are making this huge profit. And when they talked about investment coming in, who's giving them that money? I hope the government is not subsidizing any of that. If they're going to subsidize anything, subsidize generators for people. I'm really frustrated with this.
I would say one word, ma'am. If you are not a good public speaker, I'd like to see someone who's good.
Thank you.
Michelle, can I ask, did you get Mr. Quinn's email?
Yes, and thank you, very much for taking the time to, give me information about my specific household. But again, I'm also thinking it's not just me, it's my neighbors, it's the town.
But as you saw, it was most of the outages that you've experienced are results of trees that have come down. And I think Ms. Bianchi here spoke about their tree trimming program and their vegetation program and what they're doing and moving forward in the IPP program or IIP program. And I mean that they're really targeting trees and tree limbs and trying to take down a lot. You've probably seen around town there's a lot of pink ribbons out there. That's part of that program of, addressing hazardous trees and trying to reduce the number of outages because most of the outages are caused by trees and falling tree limbs.
I want to be hopeful, but they haven't said, and again, she hasn't said we aim to reduce this. There's no even acknowledgement that what's going on so far is unacceptable. It just seems like, well, this is going on. We have trees, we have squirrels, but there's trees and squirrels all over the country. This is just.
All right, so you brought up squirrels, and she didn't talk about it, but another part of the investment is these squirrel guards, basically. And what I learned in one of these learning sessions is, I said before that the wire that you see hanging there is live, and if the squirrel, as it's jumping onto the wire, touches that wire and the transformer, at the same time, because the circuit, as they're leaping, it shorts out the circuit. And it's only because that wire is uncoated. So what they are also installing are what they call squirrel protectors, which is a long piece of plastic where at that junction of the pole, so that if, when the squirrel does jump onto the wire and runs across the wire, it doesn't electrocute itself, but also doesn't cause a break in the circuit. And then on top of that, there's the trip savers that they're installing, which are going to be automatic reclosers instead of having to send a person out there and examine it and reclose. So the power in those situations would come back much quicker.
When she mentioned that, to me it begs the question, okay, what impact will that have? What do you predict will happen because of those 9? Like, if there's just no numbers, it's just frustrating to really see what to expect when they don't really offer that information.
Right, so one other statistic that I learned is that on what they call a blue sky day, right, no winds, no rain, no nothing, 40% of the outages are still caused by trees, by limbs or trees falling over that are just dead, which is very interesting. And the other 60% are these other issues.
As far as the investment she was talking about, do you all know what the source is? Is that outside investment? Are they investing internally into this?
It's internal, and did they get a small rate increase to do that? So they got a rate increase that was approved by BPU to do this capital improvement program, so we are in effect paying for it with higher electricity rates.
Okay.
But it's spread across the state of New Jersey, and I think the areas like ours that are more heavily wooded get a bigger share of that money. In Morris Township? No. Oh, so Mr. Quinn was saying he heard that there was an investment of $98 million in the northern region for this new program.
Well, I don't know what else to do at this point, like contact the governor, attorney general, just like give me some tips.
Well, I had suggested previously that you write a letter to BPU.
They don't do anything.
They don't.
Take the young lady's business card who spoke for JCP.
No. That's just for internal use, yeah. I mean, there's a customer service.
How do places decide to then join the cooperative? Like, is there...
If there's a cooperative, as we discussed previously, if we look at energy aggregation, JCP&L still delivers the electricity. So there's sourcing of the electricity and delivery. JCP&L owns the network. So they deliver it no matter what. And power outages are not going to change by changing the source.
I know that the source of the problem won't go away, but maybe it's some sort of pressure for them to do better.
I have a comment. You kind of remind me of the way I felt about 7 years ago after Hurricane Sandy, and I became very interested in electrical outages at that time, and what I wanted to do was to pull together a citizens group to serve as kind of a information forum and a place where people could brainstorm ideas, and I ended up reaching out myself I wrote letters to JCP&L, to BPU, I contacted the governor's office, and I got extensive responses from all of them. And part of what happened there was that BPU intervened because it was so significant, the event. And BPU ended up putting a whole bunch of requirements on JCP&L, which did lead to a lot of improvements, especially in communication. But the point I wanted to make is that I found JCP&L, when I reached out as a resident, they were very responsive. I got letters. They brought a group of us in to take a tour of the facility. They answered all our questions, and they were, so I can't tell you exactly who to reach out to, but my experience from the past is that they are responsive to residents.
It's nice to know they communicate back, but I just want the outages.
Yeah, you just want the outages to stop, right?
Right, and just also remind you, we're here on the local level. DP is a state agency, so think if you were to write our state legislators, so the assemblymen that we have, and the state senator, which is a little bit in flux right now, but the higher up people who are the state legislators who deal with DPU, they might be able to help also, because they cover a much broader territory than just here in Morris Township.
Will the trip savers, will they impact that side of town from, that J.C. Kendall's putting in?
Will they protect?
But they're adding in those trip savers, right?
Yes, they're doing them all over. They're doing
right. Will they, where they're putting them in, will that impact Brookfield Way, that grid? Do you know?
I would have to go look at the grid and talk to Carol to find that out if there's a trip savers going up on that circuit. Yep. But which I can do.
And one other thing that I learned that I don't think she covered also is that they're getting better at being able to switch people from a down circuit to another circuit. So she said that when a circuit goes down or they have to do maintenance, they can switch people from one circuit to another. And they're able to do that now from headquarters, and they're getting better at that with the technology they're putting on the poles. So that's another way that the electric grid is going to be improved. They'll be able, when they know that there's an outage, switch you to a different circuit. I mean, if there's a tree down, obviously some people are going to be out, but it'll reduce the number of affected homes.
At the last meeting I mentioned my street, I know you said, our own personal things.
You speaking to the microphone?
But I have a huge tree next to a power line, and it's still up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's on the radar, but
We don't know.
Is it a healthy tree?
it is. It looks like a healthy tree, but it's massive, and the branches are just hanging right over the wires.
In front of your residence?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not exactly sure if it's mine or my neighbor's.
But I can give them that, they'll have the forestry manager take a look at it.
Okay.
Right. So if you or anybody else in the community has concerns about specific trees and specific limbs, that's the kind of thing that you can let us know, and we'll send the forestry team out there to take a look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Would anybody else in the audience like to be heard right now? If not, I will move to close the public portion.
So moved.
Very good. So we will move on now to the ordinance section of our meeting. We have 4 ordinances for public hearing and final consideration. Mr. Mills, can you read the first one into the record, please?
Yes, Mayor. 2319, amending Chapter 95, Article 2, Section 6, the zoning map, to designate Block 10103, Lot 3, from the RH20 zone to the OSGU zone of the Code of the Township of Morris, and I would ask you to call for a motion and a second prior to offering for public hearing.
I go up at 2319, Mr. Mayor.
I have a second.
Second.
Very good. So with the first and the second, since this is a final hearing, we're going to open this up to public commentary and questioning. If anybody from the audience would like to question or comment on Ordinance 2319, please step forward to the microphone. And seeing none, I will close the public portion. I will make a comment just for the people who weren't here last month when we introduced it, but this, and you can see the note that we have on the agenda. The Morris County Jail, which is located in Morris Township, is located in an RH20 zone. RH20 zone would mean that you could build 20 units per acre, and it is obviously not that kind of structure, so we're removing it from that zone. And further on the agenda, you will see that we're actually removing the RH20 zone from our code. So this is the only structure that's in an RH20 zone. We're going to take it out of the RH20 zone, and next month we'll pass an ordinance to completely remove the RH20 zone from our code. So with that, I'll ask for a roll call.
Mr. Arbeniti?
John, are you still?
Yes.
Very good.
Mr. Durfee?
Yes.
Ms. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Griswold?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approved the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 2419.
Amending Chapter 95, Article 9, Section 54, subsection B, and Chapter 95, Article 9, Section 54, subsection E, Paragraph 2 of the Code of the Township of Morris. In the notation there, it talks about off-street parking spaces.
And if you weren't present last month for a very lengthy discussion on this ordinance, it has to do with the size of parking spaces that we are allowing in our town. The current ordinance, the current standard that we have, or the current code, says the parking space can be 20 feet deep by 10 feet wide, and that the aisle width between two aisles of parking has to be 25 feet wide. The industry standard is a parking spot that's 18 feet by 9 feet with an aisle width of 24 feet, and that's what the planning board recommended to this governing body. We had a lengthy discussion, and we came out that we would accept the 18 feet depth and we would accept the 24-foot aisle width, but we wanted to keep the 10-foot width of the parking space itself because there are a lot of large cars. People are concerned about getting their cars dinged. Elderly people need a little bit more space to get in and out of their cars, and so we wanted to keep that 10-foot width, and that was the compromise, and that's what we're here to vote on tonight. So with that, will somebody move 2419?
I would make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Very good, and I will now open it up for public questioning and comment on 2419. If you have a question or comment, you can come to the microphone. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion and ask for a roll call.
Mr. Arvanites?
Yes.
Mr. Dorothy?
No.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Griswold?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. And I also wanted to add, when we had our planning board meeting a couple weeks ago and this came up for master plan conformance, I reiterated the discussion that we had here on the dais that it is the Township Committee's desire to keep our parking spots at 10 feet widths, and that the planning board, we urge them not to allow variances, as they have been doing, for 9-foot wide parking spaces. It's still their jurisdiction to provide a variance if it's requested, but I let them know that the Township Committee's preference is that we keep a 10-foot wide space. So that has been relayed to the planning board. And with that, 2519, Mr. Mills.
Amends Chapter 57, Part 10, Article 35, Section 163, Subsection D, Paragraph 1, Subsection B of the Code of the Township of Morris, which deals with amendments to the Conservation Zone buffer to render the same in accordance with NJDEP standards.
Okay. And this was discussed at length at last meeting as well, and we discussed it at the planning board. And just for clarification of the public, these are very, very minor waterways, and the setbacks that are required from these waterways, there are very strict regulations by DEP regarding buffering of any waterways in the state of New Jersey, and those would always supersede any local code. So this is only for very small, I think very rare, what? Backyard streams. It's basically backyard streams that this is covering, so to reduce the setback so people who are homeowners can have more flexibility in what they build on their properties. So will somebody move 2519?
So after seeing John read the ordinances, I know why I didn't go to law school and I went into finance.
I can't take credit for this. This is someone else's handiwork.
Second.
Very good. And with that, I will open it up for public questioning and comments. If anybody so desires to comment on 2519, please approach the podium. And seeing none, I will close public portion and ask for a roll call.
Mr. Arvanites?
Yes.
Mr. Dorothy?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Griswold?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Mr. Mills, 2619.
Yes, lastly, amends Chapter 95, Article 4, Section 29, lot regulation of the Code of the Township of Morris with a footnote clarifying the definition of non-conforming setback and for bulk standards purposes.
Very good. And again, for clarification for the public, if you weren't here to hear the explanation last month by our engineer, there are certain circumstances where you have a structure that's non-conforming on a house. An older home might have setbacks that are not currently within our code, so you might have a home that has only a 10-foot buffer between the structure itself and the property border. And this clarifies that if you add something to your house, it must conform to the current code. Previously, it was a little murky as to whether you can continue that non-conforming sideline, continue that line of the house that was currently, inside that buffer, and clarifies that any new structure on the house has to conform to the current code with the current setbacks. And if you don't conform, you would have to go to the Board of Adjustment to ask for a variance. Did I cover that
Absolutely.
somewhat correctly?
Perfectly. Thank
Very
you.
well? Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. So with that, will somebody move 2619?
So moved. Seconded.
Very good. And with that, I will open it up to public questioning and commentary on 2619. If anybody has a comment or question or wants an explanation of what I just said, please approach the podium. And seeing none, I will close the public portion and ask for a roll call on 2619.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mayor Kuchar?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Kuchar?
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grazel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Now we have 4 ordinances for introduction. Mr. Mills, 2719.
Yes, Mayor, and as a footnote, I'll note with respect to each of these that they will all be considered for public hearing, second reading, and final consideration on November 13th.
I'm sorry, the bottom 3 need to go back to the planning
Oh,
board. for
planning
consistent
board.
Review, so the first one will be November 13th, and the remaining ones will be on December 18th.
As amended by Mr. Quinn then.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's quite all right. I see that.
Just for clarification on what was just discussed up here. So 2819 through 3019 are related to land use, and when anything's related to land use, we introduce it here. We refer it back to the planning board to see that it conforms with our master plan. And then once they agree that it conforms with the master plan, then it can come back here for a second reading and pass it. So that's what was just discussed here. So 2719, Mr. Mills.
Amends Chapter 15, Section 7, subsection E, vacations and holidays.
And what this is doing, just so the public understands, is changing an official holiday of the Township of Morris from Lincoln's birthday to Martin Luther King Day. So in this year and in previous years, the building's been closed on Lincoln's birthday and open on Martin Luther King Day. We're changing the official holiday of the Township of Morris to recognize Martin Luther King Day in lieu of Lincoln's birthday. We still recognize President's Day, but that's a change we're making in our code. And it's consistent with our labor agreements, as Mr. Quinn pointed out. Will somebody offer 2719?
So we're seconded.
Second. Very good. Roll call.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mayor Kuchar?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Kuchar?
Yes. And as Mr. Mills said, that we will have a second reading on this on November 13th.
Correct, thank you.
Mr. Mills, 2819.
Amending Chapter 95 of the zoning ordinance, as you previously indicated, of the Township of Morris to eliminate the RH20 zone and to remove all references to the same.
Very good. So as I stated previously, the jail has been moved as of tonight out of the RH20 zone, and now that it's moved out of the RH20 zone, we are proceeding with eliminating the RH20 zone from our code. So we will not allow 20 units per acre, not that it ever was built, but to be allowed in Morris Township. Will somebody move 2819, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Kuchar?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Kuchar?
Yes. Ordinance 2919, Mr. Mills.
Amending Chapter 57, Part 1, Article 1, Section 53, Subsection 3 of the Land Development Ordinance, and Chapter 95, Part 1, Article 4, Section 31, Subsection A, Paragraph 2 of the zoning ordinance to allow for porticos.
Very good. And I will attempt to explain this, because it was before the planning board as well. Homeowners who want to add a portico to their home often have to go to one of the land use boards to get that approved. It's a burden in some cases because the portico is just covering a front stoop that already exists. So this is setting up some code to allow for that, and so that they can just get administrative approval from the engineering department instead of having to go before a land use board for the purpose of adding a portico to their home. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good. Will somebody move 2919, please?
I will, sir.
Second?
Seconded.
Okay.
Very good.
Mr. Arvaniti?
So, we'll take a roll call.
There you go.
Okay.
Mr. Arvaniti? Yes. Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Yes. And so this is one of the three that's going to be referred back to the planning board, and the reason why I don't think we're going to hear it on November 13th is I'm not sure that there's a planning board meeting between now
I didn't
and
realize
then.
how close to the end of the month we got with the delayed meeting today, yeah. Correct, so the planning board has 30 days to act, but they'll act more rapidly than that.
It's coming back to somebody.
Right, so it's,
December 18th.
right, so this will be coming back before this board, December 18th. Okay, very good. 3019, Mr. Mills.
Modifying and amending Article 32, Historic Preservation Commission. As Noel, I'll let you give the explanation here.
Very good. So this is an ordinance requested by the Historic Preservation Commission. We have a lot of historic structures in the house, in the township, and they are concerned about historic structures being demolished without, what's that?
Basically requires a timeout before the demolition of the historic structure so it can be archived or reviewed.
Correct. So the Historic Commission wanted to have the opportunity to review anything that might happen to a historic structure within the Township of Morris. There are going to be some restrictions on what they can and they can't review, and you can see all those details in the ordinance itself, but that's basically the crux of it. We want to preserve those historic structures the best we can. Will somebody move 3019?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Arvaniti?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Griswold?
Yes. And again, this one will be back before this governing body at our December meeting.
No.
This one's November? No?
So
Okay.
November 13th then, so the record's clear for ordinance 30-19,
Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's
Thank you.
true.
Okay,
It does
Thank you.
not go to the planning board.
correct.
Very good. Now we have resolutions, 17919.
Mayor, can I interrupt briefly? Mr. Mills, 187-19, do you recommend that I abstain from that vote because it's related to the fire department?
It's better to be safe, yes.
Sure.
Why don't we handle all of them except for 187-19 and take that as a separate vote?
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Durfee.
Very good. And just to be clear to the public, sometimes when we go into closed session, when we have our closed session meeting at 5 o'clock, we come out with another resolution to add, but tonight we don't have any additional resolutions to add, so it's just what's before you. So we'll do 179 to 186, 188 through 190. Will somebody move those?
I'll offer that, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Have a second? Very good. All in favor? No, we'll take a roll
Wait,
call.
I have a question on one.
Sure.
I don't know if I should ask now.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You can ask your
Okay,
question.
so my question is on 18819, the Drive Sober grant, right?
No, that's TDF.
I got the different, I have the previous, I have the draft numbering.
There was
On this one, it says 18819.
No, the original agenda, that's why it was amended, it was incorrect. It dealt with the dry sober, it was actually our DDEF funds. And it was amended this morning and sent back out.
Okay, my question on this, I'm in favor of this, but my question has to do with the grant. The grant here appears to be going for enforcement services.
Yes.
And I was wondering if in the future it's possible to apply as part of this grant for education, for community outreach
No.
portion of it. Is
No.
it only for enforcement?
It's the gift that keeps on giving. Every time somebody gets arrested for drunken driving and convicted, we get money back to do more drunk driving enforcement.
Okay, strictly for enforcement. That's it.
And,
Thank you.
or supplies for that enforcement.
Thank you.
Very good. And I also like to point out, as we stated earlier, 19019 authorizes the appointments to the Transportation Advisory Committee, as we discussed earlier, and there are 2 appointments to the Economic Development Advisory Committee as well, and that's contained in 19019. So, Alita, you're going to be official in about 15 seconds. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Arvaniti? Arvanites?
John Arvanites? Very good.
Yes.
Sorry,
That's okay.
put the mute button and it wasn't going.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Jarvie?
Yes.
Ms. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Priscilla?
Yes. And now we'll go back to 18719.
Yes.
Will somebody move 18719? We have a second?
Second.
Very good. Can I have a roll call, please? Do we need a roll call? Yes. There's
Yes.
money, yes, money. We need a roll call.
Mr. Arvanites?
Yes.
Mr. Jarvie?
Abstain.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Priscilla?
Yes.
If I may point out, Mr. Mayor, that Mr. Arvanites is in Greece, and it is 3 o'clock in the morning for him right now.
Dedicated.
Yeah, almost 4 o'clock. Very good. Next on the agenda, our general business correspondence. We have the consent calendar as attachment A. Will somebody move the consent calendar
So moved.
as circulated?
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, standing committee reports. This is something we've initiated this year. The various standing committees of the Township Committee have oversight over various operations and initiatives, and we give them the opportunity to talk about what they've done in the past month, if there's anything to report. Who wants to go first?
I do. Mark? Go ahead.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just jump in and ask if I can respectfully drop off the call because I have to head to the airport.
Very good. Do you have anything further to report?
I don't have anything to report to the committee.
Very good. Safe travels home.
Bye-bye, John.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Mr. Jorke.
Yep, thanks, Mayor. For the Communications Standing Committee, to report, the fall newsletter was distributed not too long ago, so all residents should have received that in their mailbox. And there were some very useful tips and information from the DPW about recycling, about the newer standards, along with some tips from the fire and police departments. So thank you, Administrator Quinn and Virginia from Town Hall for their work on getting that out. Office hours, as we said earlier, will be on November 6th, Wednesday, and it will be Deputy Mayor Wilson and I. A time will be announced once we have that finalized on our calendars. The Legislation Standing Committee, over the past month, we reviewed the Historic Preservation Commission ordinance, which we just introduced tonight, and we'll be looking into the plastic bag ban ordinance upcoming, and we look forward to working with the Environmental Commission designees on that. For the Infrastructure Committee, Administrator Quinn, Committeeman Mancuso, and I will be meeting on Friday to discuss committee matters. And that is all for my committee reports.
Very good. Mr. Mancuso?
Thank you, sir. Just two things. From the Police Committee, number one, we have been asking, and it's been done, that the blue line has been repainted down Woodland Avenue, which is commemorating all our police people and the other police people all over the United States. And if anybody has seen the newsreels today, there was a gentleman in New York City who was sort of bereft of clothing, who ran around with a gun and shot a policeman, hit him in the chest. The bulletproof vest saved his life, and then he was shot. Interesting, if you notice, resolution number 18319, we received $7,500 as a grant to continue upgrading our bulletproof vests. And the very good piece of news is from Moody's. They talked about strong finances, stable finances, very worthwhile management, complete control, and a conservative methodology towards our finances, and reinstituted the AAA rating for Morris Township. And thank you. Okay, that's all I have, sir.
Very good.
Thank you. Yes, I have a fresh off the press report about an award that was given by the Morris County Park Alliance for Cornine Field as an outstanding facility. So that fits with our Parks and Recreation Standing Committee. Mr. Arvanites is the chair of that, and I thought about sharing that before he departed, but gave him credit for the airport. Anyway, we'll let him know about that when he gets back. And thank you for letting us know that right now. It just happened tonight, right? Okay, so that's good news. And one other thing that stood out to me about our Parks and Rec meeting was that we have a thick book like this of results from the survey that the Parks and Recreation Department did. I have not had time to read the whole thing, but one thing that really stood out to me was that the top option that residents were looking for was walking opportunities, which sort of fit, I thought, nicely with, you know, our Transportation Advisory Committee being set up. And speaking of our Transportation Standing Committee, I'm very happy that we just approved our new members. We have a very talented group, diverse backgrounds and skill sets. I have to say we had a lot of interest from residents. We had a lot more qualified applicants than we were able to take. And we are looking to have our first meeting before the end of the year and then start meeting on a regular basis starting in January. So as I mentioned before, I do encourage the public to come. It's a good way to get informed, and it's a good opportunity to share your ideas. I'm very excited to get this committee up and going, and I look forward to our work in the days ahead. So thank you.
Very good. So as Mr. Mancuso just mentioned, he and I are on the Finance Committee of Morris Township, and he just mentioned that we got our bond rating back, which is AAA, and we're very thankful for that. I wanted to publicly thank Mr. Quinn, our administrator, and our CFO, Francine DeAngelis, for preparing the very extensive documentation that's required for this bond sale and for the rating agency to make that rating. They spent a lot of hours doing that, and I just wanted to acknowledge their hard work, which came back with that AAA rating. So thank you, Tim, and thank you, Francine. The bond sale will occur on November 6th, and we'll know then what the rate we get is, correct? Very good. It was advertised today. So the actual, it's an auction, correct? That is correct. That occurs on November 6th. So we'll see who offers the best rate to us. At the beginning of the year, when we formed these standing committees, one of the things we did was we took our joint court, which was a standalone standing committee, and created something called a shared services standing committee and put the joint court in there since it is a shared services service with 4 other towns. Shared services was one of my focuses this year, which is why we did that. And I am very proud to say that I have organized a mayor's roundtable for shared services that Morris Township is going to be hosting next week. I've invited the mayors of Morristown, Morris Plains, and Madison to join us, along with their administrators, and we're going to brainstorm how we might be able to share more services amongst us in order to save taxpayers money. Representatives from the state of New Jersey will also be present to facilitate the discussions, and I will be reporting back to the public about the roundtable at our next Township Committee meeting on November 13th. And those are my standing committee reports. So moving on to the agenda, we now have general commentary from the Township Committee before we move back to additional public commentary. So we'll just start back at the end if you have additional commentary. Mr. Jorvie?
I do. Thanks, Mayor. First, I would like to send my condolences to the family and friends of retired firefighter Jim Hendrickson, who passed away last week. Jim served in the Morris Township Fire Department as a career firefighter for 26 years, retiring in 2011. On Monday, I joined with the fire department at firefighter Hendrickson's wake, and the outpouring of support from family, friends, and other mutual aid departments spoke volumes to me. I'd also like to recognize the hard work of both our career and volunteer divisions of the fire department who battled 3 structure fires in the past month, 2 in Morristown through mutual aid and 1 on Symore Drive a few weeks ago. So I'd like to extend my thank you to all of them for their service and the service that they provide our town on a continual basis. And lastly, I'd like to thank the Historic Preservation Commission for their hard work on revisiting the requirements for historic areas for review as they relate to exterior work and demolition. As everyone knows, we live in a historic area of the country, and that historic nature is the foundation of the character of our town, in my mind. I think it is critical that we preserve our township's history for future generations to learn about and enjoy. All too often, new construction and development dwarfs or removes long-standing structures that represent significant eras of our history, which is why I fully support the Commission's efforts to make sure that we protect the remaining historic structures from falling by the wayside. And I will submit, I did put together some commentary on the parking space ordinance, but I will just submit that into the record.
Mr. Mankisa?
Nothing, sir. Thank you.
I have two topics I wanted to comment on. One is it has to do with an interesting development that we in Morris Township are pursuing, which relates to an ongoing concern many of us have, namely, what can we do to improve communication with the public on land use issues? The 10-day notification requirement, we all know, is a notorious source of conflict, and in my opinion, a justified reason for pushback from residents. The effect of this requirement is that it's common for residents who live within 200 feet of a project to receive notification of what's happening just a few days before the public hearing and the final vote. This timing is clearly insufficient and for people to plan to attend the meeting and let alone review the information that's in the application. Because this requirement is part of state law, the municipal land use law, we are not able to do anything about it at the local level. But it turns out that there is a way that we can attempt to do something about it, and that's through the League of Municipalities, which does have a process for addressing concerns like this. Our elected officials can propose a solution, which we are, in the form of a resolution. If the resolution passes, there's a multi-step sort of vetting process the League carries out. If the resolution makes it through that, then it will be forwarded to the state legislature and to the governor with the recommendation to amend the MLUL. One of our planning officials, Jolanta Maziars, has written a resolution for us, and I have copies of it here, which I can pass out for you to see. Our proposal is to extend the notification requirement to 21 days instead of 10. We're participating in this process. We've submitted the resolution to the League of Municipalities, and we are expecting it to be discussed and voted on at 2 meetings that will take place at the conference in November. And if anyone's interested in attending those meetings at the conference, let me know. Another part of moving this resolution forward is working to build support of officials in neighboring towns and indeed across the state, because it will be eventually, if it passes, a state initiative. And I would like to thank our professionals for their support and for the time they spent crafting the resolution. It's obviously a long-term sort of approach. There's no guarantees of success, but I do look forward to, pushing for it. I think it's the right thing to do, and I look forward to working together in the days ahead to push it forward. Also, I wanted to just say a couple of words about video. Last month was our first venture into using the ceiling camera as a footage source, and overall it went pretty well. We did a little debrief today of what happened at the last meeting and sort of plans for this one, and we are going to work on moving the timing up a little bit. The goal is to get the video of this meeting uploaded to YouTube by the end of the day tomorrow, and then hopefully we'll have the links to send out the recap by Friday or by Monday, so FYI. And also, in talking with various people, the suggestion has come up a couple of times that, something for us to look at is to perhaps put a link to the video of the most recent Township Committee meeting on the homepage of the website. Just something to keep in mind. Would be easy to access, and so I'm putting that out there as a suggestion for us to consider. And that's it. Thank you.
Very good. I want to again thank JCP&L Representative Carol Bianchi for coming out tonight and making her presentations and answering the questions from this dais here. If there are public questions, I again reiterate that you can send those questions to me or our administrator, Mr. Quinn. If you have any trees that you're concerned about, again, contact me or Mr. Quinn, and we'll have those taken a look at. Last night, I attended a presentation made by the Township of Morris to the Morris County Open Space Commission. I wanted to thank Bill Fulch for all the hard work that he put in preparing the application for open space funding for the Valley View project on Picatinny Road, which we discussed earlier this year. We thank the freeholders for their past investments in Morris Township, and we are very hopeful that they'll be generous with us, again, with this current preservation project we applied for. And related to this, I got a communication from the freeholders about a week ago that Morris County is actually celebrating 25 years of a voter-approved Morris County Open Space Trust Fund, which has since been in effect since 1994 and resulted in the preservation of thousands of acres of open space across the entire county, helping to maintain the county's high quality of life. It has been shown that preserving open space in your community raises property values. So it is something that I hope that we continue to do here in Morris Township and preserve more open space, raise the property values of the remaining homes that are in our town. But it is shown that it does raise property values. Just a little bit of history, that the special committee was formed in 1994. The bit of history is that the nonprofit Morris 2000 Planning Group made a recommendation in 1994 and convinced the Freeholder Board in 1992 to put the question on the ballot, asking voters if they would like to create the Open Space and Farmland Preservation Trust Fund that's dedicated by an open space tax that we still pay today, and county voters approved that by a 2-to-1 margin. And a special committee was formed, and its first grant recommended by the freeholders were in Jefferson, Mount Olive, and Denville. But 25 years later, the county and its municipal and nonprofit partners have awarded open space grants for projects in 38 of the 39 towns, preserving 17,475 acres, which is more acreage than the size of Parsippany and almost as large as Chester Township itself. What I'm curious about is which town hasn't preserved open space through this trust fund in 25 years?
Victory Gardens, probably.
Victory Gardens. There you go. It's probably Victory Gardens. There you go. Mark got the trivia question right. Leaf collection has begun, and our crews at the Department of Public Works will be making several passes through the town over the next 6 weeks to collect leaves from residences. As a reminder, please do not put your leaves in the street, the roadway, because they can wash away into the storm drains and cause clogging of the storm drains, which then results in flooding and heavy rain. Just today I got a complaint from a resident about leaves in her street, and it also impedes walking ability of people who like to go for walks because it narrows the roadway and you have to walk around the leaves and you put yourself in greater danger walking closer to the center of the road. So there are several reasons for keeping your leaves on the curbs. I want to invite the residents to 2 upcoming events that we're having this Saturday. First, starting at 5 o'clock, we're having our annual trunk or treat event at Gidding Field in the parking lot. Bring your kids dressed in costume for some fun treats, and then starting at about 7:30, we're going to have our final big screen movie event of the season, and that's going to be followed by an actual bonfire, correct? We're good to go. We're good to go on the bonfire. We were concerned that without rain this week, we might have to put off the bonfire, but because it rained, there's enough dampness, and we're going to be holding the bonfire. So bring your chairs and blankets. Come have some hot chocolate with us. Another thing that's happening this Saturday is Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. The goal of Operation Take-Back is to ensure that unused medications are not abused and are removed from our medicine cabinets and other locations. According to a 2018 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 9.9 million Americans misused controlled prescription drugs in that year, and the study shows that a majority of those abused prescription drugs were obtained from family and friends, mostly from their medicine cabinets. So we urge you to go look through those for old drugs in your medicine cabinet, and there are 3 collection stations that have been set up. One is the ShopRite of Greater Morristown on Hanover Avenue, the Stop and Shop on Route 202 in Morris Plains, the Acme Supermarket in Randolph, and those will be collected by the county prosecutor and disposed of properly. And I also want to remind you that every day of the year we have a drop-off box at our police station across the street. You can come in at any time, no questions asked, drop off any drugs into that box, and get them out of your house. So please utilize that service 24/7, right? The front door, 24/7. The front door of the police station is always unlocked. The drop box is there, and there's a window there if you have any issues.
Morris Township Police will also be assisting at the ShopRite.
And Morris Township Police will also be assisting at the ShopRite, so if you're there, say hello to them. Last reminder, next week is Halloween. Please drive a little bit more slowly that night. Kids are in the street. You often can't see them. It's dark. Drive slowly on October 31st, please. And with that,
Mr. Mayor,
close,
I forgot to
one more,
mention.
yeah, sure.
Just one more thing. Please exercise your right and privilege to vote on November 5th. Everybody come out and vote. It's critically important for our country and for our town.
Yes, they say your voice is your vote.
If you don't vote, you can't complain.
And
My rule.
Mr. Quinn's rule is if you don't vote, you can't complain.
My rule.
That's just his rule. Next, we have public commentary. So does anybody in the audience have additional public commentary that they didn't have the opportunity to make before?
Move we close the public portion, sir.
So moved, and we will move on to consideration of monthly reports. The following reports for the township for October 2019 are on file in the office of the township clerk and township administrator. Those are the tax collector's report, finance report, police, joint court, joint library, and fire. Do we move those?
Just move them as circulated.
Move them as circulated, please. So moved. Very good. Claims for payment, a list of bills and vouchers totaling $27,812,790.17. A reminder that we're at the tax collector for the county, the school district, and the library, and that's why we collect so much money and then we divvy it out. Will somebody move the claims for payment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Jarfi?
Yes.
Ms. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Yes. Mayor Bashar?
Yes. And just a reminder that next month our meeting is November 13th, which is the second Wednesday of the month, not the third Wednesday of the month, starting at 5 o'clock here for closed session, 7 p.m. for a regular meeting. And with that, we will adjourn.